Hello, friends. Wayne on December 30th, 2022. I've titled this video, Alex Hexagon Failure. So during this week, somebody chatted me up in Discord and they're like, on Friday, we're having a radio show and we want you to come on it. I'm like, okay. So I clicked on the invite and the invite was dead. And then I said, the invite doesn't work. So he sends me another invite and that invite's dead. I'm like, oh, so these guys are just trolling me. Just more people fucking wasting my time. And then I said, your invites aren't working. So then he sends me another invite, but I'm not allowed to post in the group like everybody else because I have to verify I'm age 21. You all know I'm 54 years old, okay? So your MI5 honey trap, a radio show to 15 people, and you don't broadcast it anywhere. You don't share the content on YouTube. It's just for that Discord. I know it's a government honey trap.
MI5, he's on to us. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's noticed that a lot of people these days are very paranoid about intelligence agencies. You really can't go 5 minutes scrolling social media without seeing someone accuse another person of being either a Fed, an agent, or my personal favourite, of a glowy. But ultimately, this says more about the reputations of such agencies rather than the people themselves. As whereas intelligence agencies ultimately exist to protect their citizens, in reality, over the last few years and decades, it's no secret that they've seemingly spent more time working against them. The amount of controversies revolving intelligence agencies abusing their powers and breaching societal trust is truly off the charts. Hence why rather than having the reputation of protectors as they used to in the past, today they are more often seen as being aggressors instead, leading many people to freak out and become extremely paranoid about them. For example, as some of you may know, every week on my Discord server, me and a few friends host a small radio show called Hex Radio, whereby we talk about numerous different topics that have been relevant to the week at large, and just generally chill out. On the show, we sometimes like to interview guests who we consider to be interesting people. We've had on radical atheists, hardcore crypto bros, the ladies of OnlyFans, and a plethora of other interesting, albeit questionable individuals. One day, someone tells me about this fellow called Wayne, a gentleman who apparently believes he is some sort of scientist who knows how to reverse engineer the laws of physics as we know them. Oh, and he's also running for President of the United States. Naturally, I was very intrigued, and so I gave the green light for him to come on the show if he wanted to tell his story. And he did. The only problem, however, is that we didn't even notice he was there, as he apparently couldn't figure out how to say hello in the chat. Thus, he freaked out, left, and ever since has claimed that I am an MI5 honey trap who's been tasked to trick him and waste his time. But I can assure you, Wayne, I don't work for MI5. I promise. As humorous as this story is, however, it's also quite sad, truth be told, and ultimately got me thinking about the fear that people have about intelligence agencies, and just how little people understand about how they actually operate. As a lot of people seem to be under the impression that intelligence agencies are this omnipresent overarching force made up of nosy evil geniuses, who want to do nothing more than perv on you in the shower. But the reality is that yes, while intelligence agencies are certainly nosy, as is their job, the way they operate is actually quite calculated. I can't believe I'm about to make a Harry Potter reference when talking about something as serious as intelligence agencies, but screw it. I'm sure almost everyone watching this has seen a Harry Potter movie at some point in their life. I mean, come on, even I, who despises most films, find them to be most impeccable. Well, if you have, you might remember that the students of Hogwarts used to have a class called Defense Against the Dark Arts, whereby they'd learn how to backwards engineer the threats of evil in order to protect themselves. And what I'm going to give you here today is essentially the exact same thing. In this multiple-part series that I call DADA, or Defense Against the Dark Arts, I'm going to be breaking down some common tactics that are used by intelligence agencies against people, so that hopefully, rather than being paranoid at 5 o'clock in the morning at the unlikely event that the CIA is listening to you through your walls,
they're in my walls,
that you can instead sleep tight, relax, and protect yourself from any such potential manipulations. And we're going to start with a well-known classic, Agent Provocateurs. An agent provocateur is an undercover agent who purposely aligns with a group. But unlike a spy, whose job it is to merely observe and report findings back to their employers, an agent provocateur actually has to take it one step further and try to actively influence the organization in order to intentionally destroy it from within. From 1956 to 1971, the American FBI underwent an operation commonly referred to as COINTELPRO, or Counterintelligence Program. The aim of COINTELPRO was to disrupt domestic American political organizations that were deemed subversive by sending in agent provocateurs to hurt such groups from within. A goal that would be achieved by numerous different methods, such as: Number 1. Creating a negative public image for the group, achieved by acting maliciously to make them seem more extreme than they actually are. Number 2. Creating conflict within the group, achieved by spreading false rumors and intentionally causing drama. Number 3. Creating conflict with other subversive groups, achieved by stirring mutual artificial conflicts. Number 4. Radicalizing the group into arrest, achieved by spreading delusions of grandeur and creating purposeful traps to catch such radicals therein. And number 5. Constricting the group's capabilities, achieved by acting in ways that prevent third parties from providing funding or support. Groups targeted by COINTELPRO tended to be left-wing, being either socially progressive, economically socialist, or both. Groups such as feminist organizations, anti-Vietnam War activists, the Communist Party of America, numerous civil rights groups, and even environmentalist movements as well. In fact, many people are often surprised when they hear that Martin Luther King Jr., who today is seen as an almost universally acclaimed civil rights activist, was actually sent a letter by FBI COINTELPRO agents trying to convince him to commit suicide. Really? But the first thing people have to realise about intelligence agencies is that ultimately, they aren't independent. All intelligence agencies are funded by and directly work for the state, and the state, as everyone knows, is ran by the people. Rich, powerful, and famous people, that is. Thus, intelligence agencies will almost always be subservient to and act in support of whatever will assist the status quo powers that be to retain their status. And, as in the past, the Western status quo used to be simply right-wing, being both socially conservative and economically capitalist, it thus makes sense then why the groups targeted by COINTELPRO agents were typically those who were the opposite, as the right-wing status quo powers that be of the time felt threatened by any and all such left-wing movements. But in the modern era, this status quo ideology has changed. Changed from simply being right-wing, that being social conservatism and economic capitalism, to a syncretic mix of both left and right, known as neoliberalism, aka the combination of social progressivism and economic conservatism. And thus today, intelligence agencies themselves are now likewise neoliberally individualistic in nature. And this newfound loyalty that intelligence agencies now have is not hidden, but on the contrary, flaunted. For example, in the UK, MI6 has been known to perform numerous such ideological performative acts, like putting the trans flag on the top of their headquarters. In fact, even the head of the agency, a man who I vehemently dislike by the name of Richard Moore, has even opted to have pronouns in his Twitter bio. Putting aside the irony of the head of an intelligence agency having a Twitter account in the first place, what these bold public displays showcase, however, is an unashamed declaration of loyalty to the neoliberal individualistic mantra of the Western upper classes. Hence why today it is now the opposite of neoliberals, that being the combination of social conservatives and economic socialists, or God forbid, the rare winning combo of the two, the collectivists, who are considered subversive by such agencies, and thus must be destroyed. So let's say that you're an economic socialist. You want corporations to pay their fair share in taxes. You want strong employee rights for all workers. You want homelessness to drastically decrease to increase prosperity. You want a universal public healthcare system to ensure a healthier population. And you want education to be free and accessible to create a more meritocratic society. Well, too bad. Because economic socialism is collectivistic, which goes against economic conservatism, which is individualistic, and the economic aspect of the ruling status quo ideology of neoliberalism. Not allowed, I'm afraid. Or let's say that you're a social conservative. You want couples to treat intercourse with more severity to ensure more stable family units. You want to invest in law and order to prevent crime from running rampant. You want religion to play a more critical role in society to help foster communal relations. You want to see decadencies like alcohol start to be criticised for their woes. And you want a positive and patriotic environment whereby you feel that you can belong. Well, again, too bad. Because social conservatism, which is collectivistic, goes against social progressivism, which is individualistic, and the social aspect of the ruling status quo ideology of neoliberalism. Also not allowed, I'm afraid. And though COINTELPRO as a program was long finished and declassified, the tactics used therein are still presently used to this day in order to destroy such groups that have been deemed subversive from within. For example, number 1. Creating a negative public image for the group, achieved by acting maliciously to make them seem more extreme than they actually are. Social conservatives will know this one all too well. You'll have a socially conservative group filled with decent, upstanding people who genuinely want to improve society for the better. But then, all of a sudden, this absolute tool will appear out of nowhere and say, "Hey guys, don't you just hate women and minorities? Am I right?" And then, like clockwork, the media will ignore the 99% of decent people in said group and instead focus on the 1% of indecent people instead. Which inevitably leads to the reputation of said group being put in tatters, and it slowly falling apart from within as a result. Or, as intelligence agencies would say, mission accomplished. Number 2. Creating conflict within the group, achieved by spreading false rumours and intentionally causing drama. Economic socialists will know this one all too well. There's this psychological phenomenon known as the narcissism of small differences, whereby it's been observed that people who have a lot in common will tend to be much more critical and argumentative with each other, compared to people who have nothing in common with them at all. Both economic socialism and social progressivism, despite having almost nothing in common whatsoever, has been purposely sewed together over the years to be universally seen as one coherent unit, simply known as the left. But when I say social progressivism, I'm not talking about the social progressivism of the 20th century, such as what was purposely oppressed in the COINTELPRO days. No. I'm talking 21st century social progressivism, aka absolute, useless nonsense. And so borderline every left-wing group will have two types of people. Decent, rational, and kind-hearted economic socialists who want to build up their society to be better, and indecent, illogical, and moronic social progressives who just want to burn it all down. And these two groups, having been essentially blended together as one, has proven to be extremely useful, as agent provocateurs can easily be used to intentionally inflate the socially progressive sides of the group at the cost of the economically socialist sides. Operation 1991 perhaps being the most successful example of such. whereby gammon, an artificially created racist slur against people of European descent, specifically those who are poor, was intentionally spread amongst left-wing groups, specifically in the southeast of England, to start with. And while I won't bother to explain what the slur means, or say from where Operation 1991 originated, what I will say, however, is that the use of this slur will no doubt skyrocket in the coming years, and may even be exported overseas, as it has unfortunately proven to be incredibly effective at sowing huge amounts of discord within left-wing groups. The reason being is that it was known that social progressives, the vast majority of which ironically see no problem with such racism, would embrace the use of such a divisive slur with open arms. Whereas the economic socialists would despise it, as they know that it would cause uproar with the vast majority of the British working classes that they needed to win over to their cause. Essentially, creating a permanent wedge of ineffectiveness between the progressives, who are fighting a racist cause, and the socialists, who are fighting a class cause. AKA, mission accomplished. Number 3. Creating conflict with other subversive groups, achieved by stirring mutual artificial conflicts. This one really makes me think about religion. It amazes me how Christians and Muslims, despite having so much in common, both being socially conservative, often despise each other so much that they're willing to align with their mutually socially progressive rivals just to opportunistically spite the other. And this is more than just the narcissism of small differences talking, as this massive divide is almost certainly flamed and intentional. Christians are told that Muslims are all woman-hating, grooming gang-operating terrorists, and Muslims are told that all Christians are far-right stormtroopers in the making. Stereotypes that are constantly repeated, time after time, to solidify a feeling of mutual emotional fear amongst each other. When in reality, if both of these groups actually zoomed out for a moment to see the bigger picture, then they'd see that it isn't really each other who they should be angry at, as they are both, generally, actually rather righteous. But that on the contrary, it's actually the socially progressive neoliberals who are presented as being kind and great, who are the real danger to society, and are ultimately the ones responsible for getting them to fight each other. AKA, mission accomplished. Number 4. Radicalizing the group into arrest, achieved by spreading delusions of grandeur and creating purposeful traps to catch such radicals therein. Hello, Antifa? America first? Hello? Imagine a group of far-left fanatics who are convinced that they're fighting Lenin's revolution against the bourgeoisie of Ronald McDonald, and a group of far-right losers who are convinced that they're going to make America great again by making Catholic Wojak memes from their mom's basements. Both groups are clearly filled with very emotionally vulnerable people who are completely disconnected from the wider society at large. But given enough time and patience, there's no doubt that many such members of said groups could be lulled into having a much more reasonable stance. But why would intelligence agencies do that, when they can instead just trap them? Hey fellow Antifa comrades, we're going to raid a church tomorrow to hashtag stick it to the man. You down?
Yeah, let's do it, for Stalin!
Hey fellow based Sigmas, we're gonna raid a Planned Parenthood tomorrow to deuce volt it up for Jesus. You down? Based, we're back.
Hey comrades!
Hey Sigmas, wait what?
It's over!
Mission accomplished. Number 5. Constricting the group's capabilities, achieved by acting in ways that prevent third parties from providing funding or support. I mean, money and attention is important to everyone. All great activist groups are backed by a deluge of funds and fame, primarily from virtue-signalling corporations who want to look good to investors and the public at large, in order to make more money than they've given away. Because almost all charity in a corporate environment is nothing more than a means of marketing. But such investments can often backfire, as if such groups have a questionable reputation, it may actually end up losing the corporation more money than they've given away, rendering the illusion of charity completely meaningless. Thus, by purposely aiming to cut off funding to the group from within, by either being rude to potential donors, feigning a lack of interest, or simply intentionally wasting the funds, the opportunities that would have come from such investments almost completely disappears. AKA, mission accomplished. And in fact, you could even say that it's even easier to discredit such movements today than ever before. As in the past, agent provocateurs always had to be in person, and thus would have to go through immense effort in order to fit in to their undercover environment. Known for often changing their appearance, transmogrifying themselves like a chameleon to blend in as much as possible amongst their targets. But also manipulating clothes as a means of psychological warfare, wearing bracelets to seem more youthful, wearing a wedding ring to get more attention from women, wearing glasses to seem more sophisticated, getting just the right attire strenuously picked for maximum covert effectiveness. These cosmetic changes, alongside creating a well-calculated and rehearsed false persona in tandem, was the minimum required in order for agents to sell themselves as the person they needed to be. Such effort was so astronomical, in fact, that many agents actually got way too immersed in their job and took it a bit too seriously. Actually going so far as to enter relationships with members of targeted groups, or in some cases, even proposing marriage or fathering children with some of the people they were tasked to subvert. Such as in the case of Robert Lambert, who from 1983 to 1998 posed as a far-left animal rights activist, who had intercourse and subsequently fathered a child with another activist who was completely unaware of his identity. All the while, it should be noted that outside of his undercover persona, he actually did have a real wife and children himself. I mean, talk about dedication to the job. Naturally, however, such intense efforts and taking on such an unusual and some would say unethical lifestyle resulted in very few people being able to pull off such an act over an extended period of time. But now, with most political activism happening online, being an agent provocateur has really never been easier. As not only do cosmetics often not even come into play, but as much communication is now done over text, multiple agents can even take turns in pretending to be the individual that they say they are. Oh, this is too easy. People will tell their entire life story online to people of whom they've never even met, desperate in the pursuit of the sense of community that is innate to all humans but has long since been destroyed. Friendship, romance, and family, to most, our most precious desires, but to the man on a mission, a mere formality that is only used to advance their true goals. Thus, we must all ask ourselves, who knows who we can really trust? Of course, critics will say that agent provocateurs are only really a worry to those who join activist groups. After all, it's not as if the CIA is going to bother to send in an agent to infiltrate your friend group's chess club. But while this is true, the issue with a lot of agent provocateur type maneuvers, however, is that the agencies themselves often end up being the ones spreading such criminality in the first place. Numerous human rights organisations noticed that the UK government has a policy dating from the 1990s to allow MI5 officers to authorise agents or informers to participate in crime, and to even immunise them against prosecution for such criminal actions, including kidnap, torture, and even murder. In 2018, the British government acknowledged that MI5 officers are in fact allowed to authorise agents to commit criminal activity in the UK. Leading in 2021 to the British House of Lords voting on changing a bill which would, quote, prohibit the authorization of criminal conduct where the covert human intelligence source acts as an agent provocateur. This change, known as Amendment 11, was shockingly voted down by members, however, who voted 111 in favour and 255 against, blocking the amendment, implying that the position of the British House of Lords is to therefore support criminal conduct of agents when acting as agent provocateurs, which should really speak wonders. Intelligence agencies should go undercover to infiltrate dangerous groups, such as potential terrorist or general criminal organisations, but they certainly shouldn't be given diplomatic immunity to become them themselves. An example of the establishment protecting themselves even via means of illegality. But much like how the socially progressive activist groups of the late 20th century would be infiltrated, only to go on to have their beliefs ironically become the status quo themselves, It doesn't really matter how many agents are sent in to infiltrate socially conservative and economically socialist groups, nor what means they use, both offline and on, as our role as the inevitable status quo of the 21st century is likewise inevitable, for such is the nature of power, ever fearful, but nevertheless, ever-changing. So, overall, what have we learned today? Well, intelligence agencies have a long history of using deception, manipulation, and potentially even violence against their own domestic citizens, meaning that you should be sure to never put anything past them. Intelligence agencies purposely subvert numerous groups in order to ruin their reputations via over-exaggerating their worst elements, meaning that you should always think twice before judging said groups. Intelligence agencies intentionally manipulate groups from within to get their actual members to turn on each other, meaning that you should always be on guard for such provokers. Intelligence agencies also intentionally set numerous groups against each other, meaning that you should always try to think rationally and see the bigger picture. Intelligence agencies have been known to incite people into criminal environments whereby they are then trapped, meaning that you should never engage in such behaviours, and that intelligence agencies are known to purposely sabotage the finances and opportunities that such groups have from within, meaning that you should always be watchful of who's running your affairs. Truly a fascinating insight into the world of the covert ops. But this is just scratching the surface. Alright folks, I hope you enjoyed that, and perhaps more importantly, I would like to thank the very amazing people on Patreon who make productions like this possible. Very amazing people such as Siories, My Two Pence, Nemesis 4534, Ardent Word, Alexander Hessler, Daniel H, Jeff Schrock, Scrophilus Rex, Philippe M, Wes FR, Andrew Hamrick, Roland Manhertz, Torfik Madhon, Denton Cassels, BCI, Genesis, King Gold Stang, Daniel Worley, CT, Carolis Z, Trevor, Aleph Ashara, Drager, Furu the Bat, Henry Turner, Diogenes, Sorrowmeister, John Donny, Matthew East, Registine, John Dozer, Kevin Nedjord, I'm sure I pronounced that right, and Shazi. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.